All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Adam and I'll be your moderator. Today's webinar is all about understanding the key functionality and differences between MDR providers and MSSPs and determining which is right for your organization. Laura Hamill will be diving into that shortly. But before we begin, I do want to note a couple things. We are recording today's webinar, so we'll get that out to you probably early next week at this point, so keep an eye out for that. And then if there are any questions during the webinar, please drop them into the Q&A section of your control panel and we'll answer them at the end. And as a thank you for attending today's webinar, we will be sending out $5 coffee gift cards. So again, keep an eye on your inbox for that gift after the webinar. Laura, it is all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. And I just want to ask, where is everybody viewing from? Pop it in the chat. I'm in Denver, Colorado. Just want to give a shout out to everybody wherever you are at. All right. So when evaluating managed cybersecurity solutions, you'll likely come across one primary consideration, which is choosing between managed detection and response, or MDR, or an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider. And it's really important to understand the key functionality and differences between MDR and MSSPs so you can make the best security choice for your organization. And I just realized that chat is disabled. Sorry, guys. But thanks for joining. So my name is Laura Hamill, and I'm a Principal Product Marketing Manager here at Red Canary. And so basically what I do is I work with sales, marketing, and our product teams to make sure that the needs that we see in the marketplace and that are voiced to us from prospects and customers are reflected in our products and our solutions. And, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, sounds good. And so I have an experience working for both an MSSP and MDR providers. So I have a pretty good view of what each can share to be best for your organization. And a fun fact about me is that I've summited almost every 14er in Colorado. I have about 5 left to go. And the dog that you see in my picture might be the only one who will interrupt our webinar today. So if you hear any puppy dream noises in the background, that's my dog, Charlie. Hey, Kansas City, awesome. All right, so here's an overview of what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of where the market is at and what our analysts are saying. Then I'm going to cover the threats, vulnerabilities, and data sources that you need to be monitoring for your security environment. And then we're going to dive into the good stuff, MDR versus MSSP, the key differences in helping you choose which one is right for you. And I have some bulleted lists at the end that say some of the pros and cons from each to help you determine which one is right from your organization. And here, I'm going to ask Adam to pull up a question to see, do you currently have an MDR provider or an MSSP? And this will kind of help me guide the discussion and see which one we can focus on more.
All right, let's give it a couple seconds here. Very active audience, so appreciate that. Thank you for answering. Right now, it's kind of looking like a split between only MDR, only MSSP. Honestly, it's kind of a split between everything, to be honest.
Nice, nice. Did anyone answer both?
Yeah, we have 6 people that did answer both. 6 people also answered neither.
Nice. And there is a case for both that I can talk about at the end. Awesome. Thank you guys for answering that poll. All right, so here's a little bit of background, what the analysts are saying. So Gartner expects that there will be an increasingly diverse set of exposures and risks that organizations need to gain better visibility and control over. This should really be no surprise to any of us. And this is driven by the fast-paced development in consumer IT, hybrid scenarios for those with established infrastructure, and the use of third-party SaaS platforms. So really what we're seeing is that MDR providers and MSSPs are seeking to address similar customer pain points. We are both seeing customers that are taking in that need someone to help them take in alerts to help alleviate alert fatigue, and also help them cover in a shortage of staff or a skills gap. We do know that there's a lot of cybersecurity jobs open right now and just not enough people to fill them. So people are looking either for an MSSP provider or an MDR provider to come in and help them out with that. And both MSSPs and MDR providers seek to provide tools for SecOps leaders that help them quickly detect and mitigate threats to reduce exposure. So here's some of the threats, vulnerabilities, and data sources that we should be monitoring. So the threats I've listed out here are the top 10, and they come from our 2022 threat detection report. This is a free report that Red Canary puts out every year just to show the top threats and vulnerabilities that we're seeing in our customers' environments. And these are the kind of things that we need to keep our eyes out for. And I'm sure you'll see a couple names on here that have been all over the news, like the Kaseya attack. And then here's some data sources that you want to get your alert data coming in from. So it's more than just endpoint, and it's more than just your SIM. You also want to get these alerts from your network, from your email, from your cloud, and your SaaS applications. So first, let's take a look at how MSSP addresses this. All right, so I had to put in a mountain here because I was thinking about how, when you're hiking, sometimes you think you're at the peak or the summit of a mountain, and then it's a false peak. And then you get to the top and then you see like, oh no, there's another peak ahead of me. That kind of reminds me of the MSSP model. So MSSPs have been around for nearly a decade. And so when you start a conversation with an MSSP, you might just start out with like 8x5 coverage, firewall, endpoint, and patching. And this is kind of where MSSP started. But as you move up in your engagement with an MSSP, you'll quickly discover that you need around-the-clock 24/7 monitoring. And then you might understand that you need them to help you manage your SIM, so they'll offer co-managed SIM solutions. And then as you continue up this path with an MSSP, you could also benefit from other things like security awareness training, pen testing, and other things that they offer. So really, as you continue your journey with an MSSP, you can get more and more coverage, you can get more and more security solutions, and that can really help you as you're building out your security operations platform. But you do want to make sure that when you engage with an MSSP, you're not taking for granted that everything is going to be covered right from the get-go. And so here's a really good quote. While managed security service providers support many different parts of a security program, detecting and responding to advanced threats is not where they specialize. And this is really the void that MDR comes in and fills. So as organizations consider MDR, it's important that you understand the key differences when compared against the traditional outsourcing model of an MSSP. So here's the key foundations of managed detection and response. So first, starting with technology, we would provide a unique data analytics platform that evaluates an organization's activity using multiple detection technologies and techniques. You're also going to get a lot more expertise from an MDR provider. So an MSSP might give you access to some tier 1 SOC engineers to help you when you're intaking your alerts. But an MDR provider will provide high expertise and highly technical security analysts and threat hunters that are capable of conducting in-depth investigations, malware analysis, and threat research. There are some MSSPs that offer red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming experiences, but you need to be careful because that might be an add-on and an additional cost. And then also with an MDR provider, you'll benefit from a smoother process. So MDR providers offer well-defined processes that rely on data science, efficient security operations, and incident response best practices. An MDR provider will already have playbooks built out that they can help share with your team. This is something that you might not get from an MSSP, or you might get charged an additional fee for that. And so here's a quick diagram of how an MDR is built out. So while an MSSP usually collects data from your SIM or a SIM that they co-manage for you. And MDR will collect data from your network, your cloud and your SaaS applications, your endpoints, and your emails. Then they're able to do deeper detection by providing threat hunting, which I said, might be an additional cost, 24/7 monitoring, incident detection, and incident investigation. And here is another key differentiator between MDRs and MSSPs. Your MDR will be able to help you disrupt and contain a threat and also provide you incident response. A lot of times at an MSSP, they will get the alert, they will kind of toss it over to you, and then your team is up to decide if it's an actual threat. And then you also get some fun things like data and analytics, threat intelligence, and reporting. All right, so I kind of talked through these, but just to put them in a clearly defined table, here's some of the key differences between an MSSP and an MDR. So with your MSSP, they're really going to focus on alerting and escalation. So they'll get those alerts and then they'll say, hey, this could be something bad, and they're going to send that over to you. With an MDR, they're really focusing on threat detection and response. Another thing is your workflow initiation. From an MSSP, they're primarily looking at data from your SIM. And with the MDR, they're taking data, and in Red Canary's situation, raw telemetry from all of these different data sources. Again, customization, you can really customize more with an MDR. With an MSSP, it's going to be a little bit more limited. And that's the same with the scope. So an MSSP can give you a breadth of service. They can sell security awareness training, pen testing, some of the things I mentioned earlier, where an MDR is just going to focus on depth of service within detection and response. And then, of course, your tech stack with an MSSP is going to be more expansive. Often MSSPs resell lots of different technology that you can use to purchase to build out your security operations program. And an MDR is going to be really targeted on responding to advanced threats. And here's a really good way to look at that. So you get the depth of an MDR versus the breadth of an MSSP. With MDR, it'll be endpoint driven. You're going to get limited additional services, but very high collaboration and a lot of really intelligent teams to work with your team to help make them smarter and fill those skills gaps. And then with an MSSP, they're going to be more network and log driven. They're going to offer you a portfolio of different services, but they might have lower collaboration. If you're considering going with an MSSP, you always want to make sure that you're looking at the contract and making sure it's 24/7 coverage, and making sure you're also not being charged for additional professional service hours when engaging with someone on their team. All right, so since I said that I worked for both an MDR provider now at Red Canary and an MSSP in the past, here's some of the stuff that I've started hearing on customer calls, both at Red Canary and at the MSSP that I worked at. So we have heard from some of our customers that their MSSP would toss over alerts to their team that would create more work for them. And then sometimes the MSSP would send alerts hours or days after their team had already identified them, which was not good. Another client that I had talked to said our MSSP had strict hours and hard to reach support when we needed it. So that goes back to looking at the contract and making sure that you have written in to get the support hours and specialists that you were looking for. And then finally, another client said our MSSP would ignore the data from our EDR tool, which is really not good because you want to get data from all of those different sources so you have a really good view of everything that's going on. So this is a representation of one of the largest organizations on the planet. I can't say their name, but I'm sure you use their services almost every day. And it really shows the impact of Red Canary. So the CISO here was new to the company, and he went and took a look at their mean time to respond. And he noticed that it was, absolutely way too high. So after he implemented Red Canary, you see like that big drop with high and medium incidents and then overall incidents. So because they let Red Canary come in and help them respond and remediate, they were able to drop the time to remediation to around 3 hours. All right, so now on our proverbial hike, we have reached the fork in the road, and you might still be deciding MDR or MSS. And so I'll give you some pros and cons of each. So here's when you should choose an MDR provider. If your security team is experiencing alert fatigue, you don't just want to get alerts tossed over to your team. That's really not going to help alleviate them at all. If you need to identify threats as fast as possible, if you need 24/7 monitoring and intelligent response, and I'll highlight intelligent response there, and if your security team is resource constrained. Those are all really good points to consider and possibly go with an MDR. So here's when to choose an MSSP. So if you're looking for more consulting services that are focused on help versus 24/7 detection and response, or if you're looking for someone to manage your SIM, an MSSP is going to be a good choice for you. Also, if you're searching for broader security coverage, you're building out your SecOps and you just need coverage all around, you might want to consider an MSSP because they can pull together all of those different tools for you. All right, and now I will hand it over for some Q&A.
Awesome. We do have a couple. The first one is, can I replace my MSSP with an MDR provider?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really depends on how your MSSP is used. So some MDR offerings are including more of the services that are associated with a traditional MSSP, and others are staying focused on detection and response. So you want to make sure that you clearly understand what the MDR can support and supplement with internal resources or an MSSP. Do we have any others? Not sure if I lost Adam, but I'm looking and it looks like we have another question. Would I ever use an MDR provider and an MSSP? So the answer to that is yes. And it's very common for organizations to use an MSSP and an MDR provider. And it's a common combination with the MSSP handling the basic security functions. And then the MDR provider is going to come in and be specifically focused on identifying threats. So it's not common for an organization, or it's not uncommon rather, for an organization to prefer the simplicity of partnering with only one managed vendor. So for organizations that use this strategically, it's going to mean establishing an MSSP for MDR. And so this approach opens the organization up to a high likelihood of relying on sometimes subpar MDR offerings. So as a result, the organization will either be continually disappointed with the MDR offering or maybe disillusioned with its security. So yes, you can use both, but I would recommend probably choosing MDR if you want deeper detection.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. Lost internet for a brief moment there. We do have a question up on the screen. If you would like to start a dialogue with an MDR expert after the webinar, yes or no, very simple. Just making sure there's no other questions. Looks like we got one here. Can you please specify the differentiators setting Red Canary apart from other MDR providers?
Absolutely. So I think our number one differentiator is our ability to use raw telemetry. And then we also have a lot more specialized teams from other MDR providers. Some other MDR providers we're seeing out there will offer their own SIM solution too. So they're kind of doing a one-stop shop. And then when we dive into their technology, they are actually looking more like an MSSP. So Red Canary really just specializes on MDR. And therefore, we're able to offer you quicker detection, faster response, and we're also faster to set up and get going than some of our competitors. Actually, I'll say most of our competitors are all.
Perfect. Any other questions out there?
Alan agrees. Thanks, Alan.
Love to see that. Cool.
How fast is implementation? So we can get you up and running in just a matter of days. And if you'd like to hear more about implementation, we can also reach out to you on that.
Excellent. Any others out there? All right. In the meantime, I'll do my wrap up here. We did record the webinar today, so we'll get that out to everyone in the next couple of days or so. Again, anyone who attended today, we will be gifting you a $5 coffee gift card, so keep an eye out on your email for that as well. And upon exiting today, you'll see a quick 10-20 second survey. We appreciate any feedback you can give to us. All right. Thank you very much. Cool. Looks like that's all. Laura, thanks so much for the time today. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.